Hello and welcome to Naked World Podcast, coming to you live from Beijing, the capital city of the People's Republic of China. The objective of our Naked World Podcast is to inspire, to uplift, to motivate, as well as to encourage personal growth and introspection. We will be broadcasting twice weekly, every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 p.m. Beijing time. And our podcast will be published on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on some of the podcast platforms. I am your host, RJ, and invite you to join us on this journey. This is episode 2. In episode 1, we focused on the theme, Know Yourself. As a sort of reminder, we were encouraged to focus on our strengths, our core values, our skills, our talents, our beliefs, how we think, and what motivates us. That was all taken care of in episode 1. Today, in episode 2, we will be focusing on the topic, Grow Yourself. You know, Eric Butterworth said, don't go through life, grow through life. And that is what we're going to focus on, is growing yourself. You know, when you have a better understanding of yourself and why you are the way you are, you can learn how to build upon your personal strengths and overcome your personal limitations. Once we have learned to know ourselves, as we have been encouraged in episode 1, the second step is then to focus and understand. Once you know yourself, you will understand yourself and you will understand what your strengths are and also what your limitations are. Right? So the first area that we want to look at in growing ourselves is learning from our limitations. Have you identified your limitations or your weaknesses? In the first episode, that is what should have happened. If you go through the values, the skills, and that which drives you, the passions, you would also have determined, in order to know yourself, what your weaknesses are and your limitations are. Our limitations and weaknesses often causes us to see ourselves and others sometimes as inadequate, sometimes as not being worthy, and for ourselves sometimes it can lead to personal, say, retribution or judgments, where we look at our own weaknesses. And, you know, sometimes it becomes difficult for us to even forget and forgive ourselves. And I always want to encourage, my personal philosophy is, you know, unto thine own self be true. That is what we heard in episode 1. But be kind to yourself. Love yourself. If you don't love yourself, we can expect others to love yourself. See, whilst we might see our limitations as imperfections, having an awareness of our limitations will enable us to balance them in an appropriate manner. Will be able us to help us to overcome them and to work around them, to investigate and to see what we can do further in that. Right? So that is the first part of the growth process, growing ourselves, is to learn from our limitations, to learn from our weaknesses, not necessarily to run away from our weaknesses. We all come short. We all have weaknesses. And in being aware of it, we look how we can engage in. You know, sometimes, let's look at the example, a weakness. Example, some people will say, you know what, my weakness is, I've got a weakness for smoking or drinking. And really, if you look at it, you'll actually find that that's not a weakness, that's actually a strength. Because, you know, it's something that overcomes your own will. It's stronger than your own will. So sometimes we look at something that we see as a weakness and say, that's actually a strength, because I will do that. I will put everything aside to do that specific thing. So sometimes weaknesses are not really weaknesses, and it's disguised strength. If you are serious about making money online from home, then visit smmenterprisesonline.com. smmenterprisesonline.com. The second part that we want to focus on today is, having identified our strengths. In episode 1, we heard what we need to do in knowing ourselves, to identify what our skills, our talents, our values, and all those things are. And the second part is we build upon the strengths that we've identified. We have now spoken about limitations and weaknesses. Now we want to speak about those strengths, those values that drives us, that motivates us. Too often we are not aware of our true capacity for helping ourselves and others. We don't know what our strengths are, and we need to pause. And in all of us, there are definitely strengths. By focusing on that and doing what we do best, or capitalizing on our strengths, it allows us to be more productive and motivated in whatever we do. It's very, very important to identify the strengths of that we possess, so that we can use that and build upon it to strengthen us in going forward as well. Knowing the specific strong points and weak points we will have will help us to realize that having others on our side, we can do what we couldn't do alone, and will be more beneficial than trying to do it alone if we know our specific strong points and weak points as well. So those are the two elements for the first part. It's, learning from our limitations, our weaknesses, identifying it, and building on our strengths in order to help us. So we look at weaknesses and strengths, and that help us to grow ourselves. You're listening to Nakig World podcast, coming to you live from Beijing, the capital city of the People's Republic of China. Please follow and like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and subscribe to our Nakig World podcast. Right, let's continue. When you read about people and their outstanding achievements, or when you discuss with someone who looks like they've achieved their goals or successful, you often find there's a set of productive habits behind their success. And the same goes for people who have issues, maybe they doesn't achieve, that are underachievers. This often stems from a collection of bad habits. So the next part of our talk, I want to bundle under the theme productive habits. Some habits that will help us to grow, some habits that will make us more successful. This whole theme from episode 1 and now episode 2, the objective is to make us succeed, for us to be happy, make wise decisions, for us to grow, to get to know ourselves, to grow ourselves. So the first part of this productive habit is positive thinking or positive environment. And what does this mean? That we try to start every day on a positive note from the time that we open our eyes, from the time that we see the new day. I mean, if we really think of it, when we open our eyes, that already is an achievement. Some people open their eyes and say, "Good morning, Lord." Others say, "Good Lord, morning." It's a totally different approach to starting the day. If we start every day positive and make that a habit, tell yourself, whenever I open my eyes, I'm going to be thankful. You tell and you will yourself. Encourage positive thoughts through the day. Try and engage with positive people. Stay away from negative people. Positive energy. Try stay away from negative energy. I had a good friend of mine. He was very, very, focused on this. He would come into an environment where people would be, and if people become negative or they start complaining or they say anything, he would move away and he would say, "Listen, sorry, I don't have time for your negative energy," and he would just walk away. And that, I believe, is a good habit to start. Like many of the other things that I will be speaking about, it's one of those things that we will need to will ourselves, that we will need to action to change. It won't just happen. Let me jump then to the second point, because I want to say something around this positive thinking again. The other one, which is my favorite, is focus on being joyful. Surround yourself with people who are joyful. My favorite hymn is hymn number 136 in the English hymnal. And it says let your hearts be ever joyful. You know, the third verse of that hymn says, darkness soon will gather around us if we turn away from him. Soon our steps will be uncertain and a light of joy grow dim. Joy is a very, very important habit to practice and to have, like positive thinking. Joy must be worked for. You know, it's like the funny thing in life, if you thought about it, darkness is the default. Darkness will always be there. You don't switch darkness on. So negatives or evil are always there by default. Evil must exist. Don't ask me, and I'm not going to go into detail in terms of why it is like that. But in order to have light, joy, or even positive thinking, you've got to switch that on. Something needs to be done. You know, like with evil as well. You know, the funny thing is, for evil, for example, to flourish, they say, all it needs is for good men to do nothing. If you don't do anything, there will be evil. You know, if you go into the room at night, darkness will be there. You've got to switch the light on. Likewise with joy as well. You need to seek joy and positivity. For me, that is a big belief in my heart, is that, you know, you can achieve so much. Without joy, things become just more difficult. Life becomes more heavier. And everything is being seen from a very difficult perspective. So I would want to say, let us focus on habit number 1, which is positive thinking, a positive environment, positive thoughts, having friends that are positive. Cut out friends who are negative. Look for those who have got joy. You know, draw yourself onto those things that provide for your joy and for your edification, that provides, because it also says, you know, when we go through it, it says the joy in the Lord's work is our strength. That even if we don't have joy in the Lord's work, we will be weak. It brings us back to weakness, which pulls us down. And coming back to what we said in episode 1, during this period of COVID, people have lost so much. People become depressed. They've lost loved ones. What we're trying to do with these podcasts is try to bring back some new life, to say, let's focus on. We're not saying it's wrong not to have these emotions, but this is Naked World's way of trying to contribute to a sense of joyfulness, a sense of positivity around us. We have got our divine services, we've got our choirs, and we've got everything. But this is just another resource that we can utilize or not to utilize to bring us back into the positive realm, so that we can tackle whatever it is that we need to face. The third habit is, and it might sound funny, but it's got to do with trust. Now these 3 habits, I want to say, the habit of being positive, a habit of being joyful, a habit of trusting in God. Those are the habits that we want to encourage within ourselves, so that through that we can grow. Are you interested in doing an online tourism business course? Visit tourismbusinessonline.com. tourismbusinessonline.com. You're listening to Naked World podcast, coming to you live from Beijing, the capital city of the People's Republic of China. Please follow and like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and subscribe to our Naked World podcast. Now we're coming to the end part of our podcast, and I want to give you a text word, a Bible word out of Romans 8, verse 28 to 29. That's in the New King James Version. Romans 8, verses 28 to 29. 8 to 28 and 29. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to His purpose. For whom He foreknew, He also predestined to be conformed to the image of His Son, that He might be the firstborn among many brethren. So now we know that all things work together for good to those who love God. And as we grow, not only, as I say, naturally, we also want to grow spiritually and get a deeper understanding of what it is for those who love God. That nothing can separate us, and that this spiritual knowledge also leads to our spiritual growth. That we do not allow any discouragement or failures to keep us down. That us standing true and whatever we must go through is evidence of our true faith. That we keep on standing up, we keep on enduring, and we see whatever we go through as opportunities that we are blessed with to grow. So whatever the circumstances that we need to go through, it works together for those who love God. And we see it as a blessing, as an opportunity for growth. How can we expect to grow in the fruits of the Spirit? Such as patience, kindness, joy. And when we're not put into situations that require these things, where we need to practice our joy, practice our patience, and practice our peace. That is the opportunity that we have, using the processes of growth, that we grow in not only in the natural understanding, but also in the spiritual understanding. Well, that concludes our podcast for today. And I hope you find it valuable, and that we utilize whatever thoughts came out of this discussion. Please follow and like our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and subscribe to NACIC World Podcast, our social media handle at NACIC World. Until next time, goodbye from a lovely Beijing in mainland China till we meet again.